Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fat Muscle Project podcast. That's PHAT, the good kind of fat. I'm John Gorman, one of your hosts. We've got Lisa Franz on, as always. How are you, Lisa? What's going on?
I'm doing very well, John. Thanks for asking. How have you been?
Good, good. Things are, we're headed into the fall. Black Friday is going to be here before we know it. Christmas is going to be here before you know it. So just life is busy, but very blessed. Knocking out these podcasts left and right with all these great, we've got a lot of good guests that have been on, right? And today is probably one of the days I'm the most excited for that I've been in a long time. We've got Dr. Jym Stoppani on the show. Jim, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks for having me on, John. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Yeah, this is for me, this is kind of a long time coming because I'm someone, my clients affectionately refer to me as old man Gorman because I've been doing this 20 years. But what people don't realize, I kind of want to preface this show by saying, we were talking about this before the podcast started. You're someone that's really, I would say a legend in the industry. You've kind of paved the way for people like me, whether it's through your research or your just no bullshit approach to content that you've put out and really just telling the truth about either the supplement industry or muscle gain, fat loss, just all the things out there. Really, for I'm thinking since the late '90s. I started to notice you kind of in the 2000s. So to have you on the show to tell your story, I'm really, really excited to get started with that. So if you would, for our listeners that aren't familiar with you, just give a real quick, brief overview of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the great intro. However, if you're referred to as old man Gorman, and I'm one of the people that got you started along the way, I guess that I'm super old man Stoppani. So yeah, guys, I'm Jym Supplements. I have a PhD in exercise physiology, a minor in biochemistry. That's from the University of Connecticut. And then I did my postdoctoral research fellowship at Yale School of Medicine, Department of Cellular Molecular Physiology, where I studied things like how nutrition and exercise turn on or turn off certain genes. And we're talking about genes. I'm not talking about the genes like your genotype that gives you blue eyes or how tall you are, right? It's more of the what we call the phenotype, which are the proteins that our body uses every day. And I'm not talking about proteins for building muscle. I'm talking about proteins that are functional, like making hemoglobin, which is going to carry oxygen to your tissues in the blood. So anything you do, right? Anything we put in our mouth, whether it's food, a supplement, any activity we do, the what we kind of see on the outside starts at the molecular level, starts by activating or even turning off certain genes, which make the proteins that then control all these processes. So that's sort of my background. I got into the science of it and the molecular aspect from reading Muscle and Fitness as a teenager. My father got me interested in weightlifting. He built a nice little gym in our basement. And so I started working out with him. And he would bring home the muscle magazines. And back then, Muscle and Fitness was called Muscle Builder Power, I think, something like that. And so I used to read these, Joe Weider magazines, then it became Muscle and Fitness. And I was learning about things like muscle fiber type as a 13-year-old, or how much protein you need or, carbohydrates. And so it was fascinating to me that there was this science to building, muscle. And, that I kind of wanted to get into that field. And in the back of my mind, I had this little notion that maybe there might be a possibility that one day I could actually have articles in the very magazine that I'm reading and learning the science as a kid, Muscle and Fitness. But again, far in the back of my mind, who knows if that would ever happen. So I landed at Yale School of Medicine, was doing research, on like things like fasting, which genes it turns on, like uncoupling proteins, which then make your mitochondria less efficient. And so you create more heat than you create energy. And that's one of the reasons why intermittent fasting is so effective for fat loss. It increases the amount of these uncoupling proteins that make your body less efficient. And so you have to burn more food to create the same amount of energy. But I took some of the research that I was working on, and I kind of knew somebody who knew somebody at Muscle and Fitness and said, hey, would you mind passing along these article ideas to them and see if they had any interest? And they did, and they loved the concept. They contacted me, and then I started writing for the magazines. And then, probably after about almost a year of doing that, they contacted me and said, "Hey, would you have? This is a crazy idea, but would you have any interest in leaving academia and coming to be our science editor here at the magazines?" And they have Muscle and Fitness, Flex magazine. They had Muscle and Fitness, Her Shape, which many may remember, Men's Fitness as well. So
Yeah.
there's a whole, different titles, different areas of fitness that they're focusing on for different populations. And so what's interesting is, they thought I would never leave academia. I've got a career at Yale School of Medicine. Why would I leave that to work for a bunch of muscle magazines? What they didn't realize is those are the very magazines that started me, on
Yeah.
my science track. And so, I flew out, interviewed, met Joe Weider, and it was a done deal. Much to the surprise of my colleagues at Yale, they wanted to do an intervention with me. Like, wait a minute, you're throwing away this career as a research. You're an award-winning young researcher at Yale School of Medicine. You have a career here, and you're going to go leave Connecticut, leave New Haven, where Yale is, and go to LA and work for a bunch of bodybuilding magazines. Are you feeling okay? Is everything okay? And I'm like, no. What you don't understand is I've kind of come full circle here. This
Yeah.
has always been one of my dreams in the back of my mind. And, as I'm doing research at Yale, I have to focus on that molecular stuff, the uncoupling proteins. And that's really what I have to focus on. But as I'm on PubMed, where you go to find all these studies, I'm seeing things like creatine, another creatine study, and this is back in very 2000, literally 2000, 2001. And I'm like, man, I just don't have the time to read that study in creatine, but that's really my really true interest. I wish I had more time. And so I saw the position as senior science editor as a way to bridge the gap between what's going on in the lab and how to apply it, because there's so much research going on that nobody really knows about. And again, not today with social media, you hear more about research that's going on, but back in 2000 there wasn't really a way to get that information out there.
Yeah.
And so I saw that as a great opportunity for somebody who understood science all the way down at the molecular level, yet could apply it, as a personal trainer in the gym. And so I saw that as my calling. And, I got the Muscle and Fitness, and, so glad that I took that leap and sort of changed the direction from being just in academia to actually being able to, not that I'm not saying academia doesn't help people, but you're not really teaching people. You ask a scientist about their study in broccoli, and they found maybe it was a 20% reduction in cancer from broccoli. And then you ask the scientist, so would you recommend people start eating more broccoli? And their answer is, oh, no, I'm not saying. This is just the data that we have, and here's what we found. It's one study, and they don't really want to make any conclusions or take any of that data and then make practical applications out of it. So I saw that as an opportunity for me to be that person that's sort of bridging that gap and showing them, yeah, maybe if this study showed broccoli reduced your cancer risk, maybe you want to consider eating more broccoli,
So I've got a real quick question. We've got people listening to the show, maybe they're 20s, 30s, and they have people out there saying, "Hey, listen, you should stick to this. You should go do this for a job. You should, it kind of like the research was saying, like, why would you leave what you have that's a very stable thing, right? And obviously, we can look at your career and your life now and see that, you went way above and beyond what you ever probably would have been able to accomplish if you would have stayed where you were. Did that drive you? Was there any kind of motivation there? I don't know if they had doubt in you or anything like that, but was any of that a driving force for you?
Like proving all the doubters. You mean?
Yeah, yeah. Is that something that?
No, not I mean, you know, when I was lucky to um, be well groomed, and I mean it in a good way, not,
Yeah,
by my professors at University of Connecticut, and by that I mean they really set me up to understand what my responsibilities are as a person with a PhD in an area in a field,
yeah,
right? And we took there was a course that you took on getting a PhD. And what we were taught was it's almost like a black belt. I don't know if you know that I do a
yeah,
lot of martial arts and have grown up doing martial arts, but when you get a black belt, any martial artist will tell you now you're ready to learn karate or whatever now you start.
yeah,
All
yeah,
that work, all those years were literally preparation to start learning the art. You know
yeah,
what I mean? And so getting a PhD, it's like now you're ready to start learning science. And you have a responsibility. This is what we were told in this course. We have a responsibility to share with as many people who are willing to listen to what you've learned and what you know in your area that they don't because they're not studying. That's your responsibility.
yeah,
You have to get that information to as many people as possible. And so that really weighed on me. And so really the driving force is literally just educating. Is it's not a it's not about success, however you want to define success. It wasn't about proving anybody. It was just I understood this responsibility that I had. Um, and I wanted to share it with as many people who will listen.
yeah. And you quickly were early to a lot of this stuff, especially with getting a lot of eyeballs on you. What was that like making the transition where, we have message boards and bodybuilding.com, and obviously you're writing for a magazine, and then, you're in charge of the editorial part of the science part of the magazines. I know a lot of eyeballs came to you in the early 2000s and up to the 2010s. What was that like for you? Because this day and age, like in the social media world, everyone wants eyeballs. They all want attention. You got it in an era before social media. What was that like for you? I'm just kind of curious because a lot of us will never experience that or not know what that was like pre-social media.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think back because I really didn't want the attention. I'm a scientist.
Yeah.
I'm not a you know I'm not a real social person. I'm the guy that wants to be in the gym in the lab working
Yeah.
on the like that's all I want to do. And so I'm not really, I'm not the life of the party. I'm not, I'm not entertaining in any format. And I say to people all the time, if I started now, right now, if I was just starting now, got my PhD, you'd never know who I was.
Yeah.
My content is I'm a scientist. You know what I mean? It's not flashy. I'm not a model. I'm not an actor. My stuff is very basic and I'll call it even boring at times. A lot of my videos are boring, not to the person who really wants all that information, but for the majority of people who are popping on TikTok or whatever, my videos are not going to, attract them. You know what I mean? Like you can now find 4 million other people who are doing the same topic about a biceps curl, but have
Yeah.
made it far more interesting. The video quality is far beyond, I'm just about getting the information to people. So
Yeah.
I didn't really I wasn't looking for the attention. it just sort of came. And the reason I started doing the videos was one of the muscle and fitness team members, who's now my business partner, Mike Meckerlane, you know, he had a master's degree in exercise science, yet he was in sales, selling ads in the magazine and running the website portion of the magazine. And because he had a bit of understanding of exercise science, he was like, your programs, your program design is, I've never seen anything like it. You should consider, doing videos to teach people how to do this. And so I said, sure, okay, let's give it a try. And the very first video I did was in my garage with paint cans on the shelves. I literally balanced, it was a Sony camcorder. You couldn't even do this on your phone then.
Yeah.
I didn't have a tripod. I had a bike in the garage and I balanced the camera on the seat of the bike. And the first video I ever did was the reverse grip bench press in my garage, literally with paint cans. I had a power, that's where I had a 2-car garage
Yeah.
with a lot of equipment in it, power rack, Smith machine, but that was the very first video I did. And, the rest of the staff was just like, who's going to even watch this? Why do you want him to do this? And so I took him aside afterwards and said, even though they don't want me doing this, I'll go home and shoot a video for you. And then you can tell me what you think of it. And,
Yeah.
it was massively successful because teaching somebody how to bench press in an article in a magazine with still photos versus a video,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I often compare it to trying to teach somebody how to tie their shoe. Can you imagine reading an article
Yeah.
with just text and maybe a few still photos of how to do the loop and to learn how to tie a shoe? Or you could watch a video where you literally see every step. So
Yeah.
I knew right away this, as an educator, this is a great way to be able to teach people. And, this is right at the start of, YouTube. This is like 2004 or 5 when
Yeah.
YouTube literally just started. And so I really saw that as, not, like I said, not as an opportunity to get views. I didn't want the attention. I just wanted people to learn the information that I wanted to teach them.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, as we start to talk about this shift from, the magazines and the attention there to slowly YouTube to now all of a sudden we're going to have Facebook and then later Instagram and all this.
Yes.
You've
This is
built
before
one.
all of that. This,
Yeah, predates it all. You've built a hell of a community. Talk about your community that you have because you've got a website to where people can join and they can get all the information that you put out. You're still continuing to educate, but you've got a really big community.
yeah, I mean, I've been doing it a long time.
Yeah.
So, obviously with time comes, a bigger following. But obviously the information has to be credible and work, I mean, that's the critical thing is, what, what my following is built on is the trust, they wanted to build bigger biceps. So they watched one of my videos, followed the advice, and actually got bigger biceps. Okay. Then they decided, you know what? Maybe I want to be a little bit leaner. So they watched another one of my videos or read another one of my, and it actually worked to help them get leaner. And it's like, wow, this guy's 2 for 2. You know what I mean? Like, and that's how he builds that's how you build the trust. Oh, when should I start taking creatine? Oh, try taking it, pre and post, try taking 5 grams. Oh, that worked, and so it's delivering that information to people, consistently effective information that helps them, that builds that trust. And that's the critical part of this is it's not about, how big are my biceps. It's about what am I going to teach you and is it going to help you?
Yeah. And I think speaking of trust, so this is a perfect example, and it leads into our next question on starting your own supplement line. You had built trust for years and years and years and a long time by just putting out content and helping people, which, those people become loyal to you, and you did it in a genuine fashion. So now you launch your supplement line, the Jym Supplement line, Jym spelled Jym. Of course, all of our links are in the show notes where people can check all your content out, your supplement line, the whole 9 yards. But you started that, and that to me is the perfect indication of, it got popular pretty quick from what I understand and what I remember. Talk about launching your own supplement line. What was the driving factor behind that?
Yeah. So, I'm not a businessman by no means. And I've seen, working for Muscle and Fitness and Flex Magazine, I've seen supplement companies start from the ground up and, and fail or become successful. But regardless of whether they fail or successful, the startup was massive amounts of work and effort and time and money. And I never even considered starting a supplement line. However, one of my responsibilities at the magazines was reviewing supplements
Yeah.
and then giving people advice, not just on ingredients like creatine or beta, but on actually, the companies that are advertising in those magazines, right? They wanted me to review their supplements. And so, I started reviewing supplements. And and this is, 2009, 10, and things like concentrates started in 2010. If you know what concentrates are, basically it was a trick where they're telling you that in, say, this pre-workout, this scoop, it's only 3 grams, the entire scoop, three. But in that 3 grams, it's equivalent to a 20-gram scoop because we've super concentrated it, which is a lie because what, if you have leucine or, in your supplement or creatine in there, it's already concentrated down to its, final. You can't concentrate it anymore. You know what I
Right.
mean? And so they were absolutely lying. And then they were also doing proprietary blends that
Yeah.
was very popular where they didn't even tell you how much of each ingredient was in there. And so it would just say creatine, beta alanine. And and I was teaching my readers, you need 5 grams of creatine. You need 3.2 grams of beta alanine. You need the dose is important, not just if it's in there. And so to review these products, I would need to know the dose to be able to tell my reader whether or not it's of value to them. And I would contact these companies, and sometimes they would refuse to provide me the dose, or stupidly, they would provide it. And it would be like 500 milligrams of
Yeah.
creatine. And we need 5 grams, that's 5,000 milligrams. They'd have 500 milligrams or 300 milligrams of beta alanine. It's just like, this is pixie dust,
Yeah.
And so I started realizing that there are not many supplements that I can honestly recommend, nor that I want to take now that I know
Yeah.
how little is in here. And so I started formulating for them. Here's your pre-workout formula. Add this much creatine, add this much beta alanine, add
Yeah.
this much branch chains, add this much betaine, add, et cetera. And they were, buying them single ingredient, unflavored, and mixing it together and choking it down. It was effective. It worked, but it didn't taste too great. So they were begging me. They were like, "Can you just make this for? Is there any way you could literally just we'll buy this?" And so, I had a good relationship with bodybuilding.com at the time. For those of you who don't remember what bodybuilding.com. So this is another shift from print to online where the
Yeah.
websites. And bodybuilding.com back in 2010, 11, they were,
Massive.
you guys have no concept of how big. If you wanted to learn or buy supplements or learn how to lift or whatever, you went to everybody went to
Yep.
bodybuilding.com. And so I had a relationship with them and, sort of mentioned that everybody was asking me and they said, Jim, if you make us, we'll buy them. Like there's nobody else we would trust. And so they were like, please, we will be your distributor. Consider doing that. And so I started with pre-gym, and again, it was as a tool to sort of teach them, here's what a pre-workout should look like. I've been telling you what it shouldn't look like, right? But now, and I've been telling you how to make it. Now I'm just going to provide it for you. And it was literally an overnight success. Launched in July of 2013. By 2015, it was doing 100 million, the line, 100 million in revenue at one retailer, bodybuilding.com.
Yeah, that's fucking crazy. I mean, that
Crazy.
first of all, thank you, because what you did for the industry is you caused that shift. Like there were other people, but like you were the guy, like putting the flag in the ground and being like, and I get a little hot about this. So I get, I'm gonna swear a little bit, but I'm like, these fucking companies that are pixie dusting and doing all this shit, you caused the industry to shift because you're putting out content. And all the stuff that we build on our end with our supplement lines, it's exactly like what you're talking about. And you laid the groundwork for that. You really helped clean the industry up. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. I appreciate you recognizing that, because that was the effort. It was like, if we don't clean this up, the industry is going to go away. Like I kind of I say this about ibuprofen, right? We all know what the dose of ibuprofen is, right? About 200 milligrams, right? If you want to get rid of a headache or help with inflammation, you need at least 200 milligrams. We all know that, right? What if a pharmaceutical company decided that they were going to put out, you can't do this, but let's just say you could, an ibuprofen that was only 5 milligrams.
Yeah.
Okay. What if they did that? And they found an area with high traffic where people come by, and you don't have to put the dose in there. It just says ibuprofen, right? And people start coming and taking it and taking it. And then it sells because, it's cheap. It's much cheaper than any other form of ibuprofen you can get. Nobody really pays attention to the dosing. They start taking it. That company's making money. Now another company sees that they're making money selling 5 milligrams of, why the hell are we putting 200 milligrams? Let's sell 5 milligrams. What is going to happen to the perception of, is a 5 milligram dose of ibuprofen going to be helpful? No, right? What is going to happen to the perception of ibuprofen? It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? That's what happened to supplements.
Yeah.
All these companies came along and started lying about what was in there. Like, oh, there's creatine in here, right? 500 milligrams of creatine is not going to do anything for you. So, like the ibuprofen, if you're getting underdosed on all your ingredients, what is your take going to be on supplements? That they do not work. So I saw this as another responsibility of mine to correct this before no customer even wants to bother with supplements, because none of them work, right? At least that's what they think, because they've all been underdosed, or the government steps in and puts an end to all the nonsense that people are putting on shelves.
Yeah. Man, it sounds like you had a hell of a first year. Even in the first few years, was there anything that you learned from? Was there any mistakes, whether it was business side or anything just in general, those first few years where you're like, either made a mistake or you just learned something like super, super valuable?
I mean, there's so many lessons.
Right.
It's hard to really hone in on anything in particular. I mean, I don't know those who care or even know about the issues I had with bodybuilding.com, but they sued me. So
I wonder if there's going to end up being a conflict of interest either through the magazines at the time or anything like that, because here you are helping these other companies and shedding light, but then you launch your own. Like I
Oh, and
could see.
now I was their enemy.
Yeah, yeah,
I went from being their poster boy to every other supplement manufacturer's poster boy, right? They all wanted to, oh, there's a video Jim's talking about creatine. We sell creatine. Can we get him to, like they
yeah,
wanted me to promote. Now I'm working against them. So I was sued by every company you can think of back in the day. Literally,
mm,
they were literally just making up stuff to just try to hurt me financially, with legal fees. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, I've paid millions and millions but bodybuilding.com sued me. And then
Damn.
Muscle Fitness sued me on top of that, right? And so although they didn't win, obviously I will, but bodybuilding.com tried to claim that they owned my supplement company.
Damn.
Yeah. So, um, yeah. So if there's any lesson I've learned is, business is, it's not fun. Uh, it is not.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't want to go into business, but they tried to claim that they owned, and the reason why is they were trying to sell their company, right? So they were worth, whatever. And again, the absolute numbers aren't accurate here, but relatively speaking, they were worth about $400 million. I was
Right.
doing 100 million on their website, right? So when they had prospective buyers come in and they saw 400 million, and then they were like, "What's this 100 million over here?
Yeah.
What's this?" And so bodybuilding.com wanted to add that 100 million to their worth or value because they could sell it for more. And so they said, we own that. And then I started getting emails from bodybuilding.com. Don't you want to sign over your company to us because of all the help that we've provided you?
Mm,
Literally, I was getting emails from executives of bodybuilding. They were at first nice, trying to coerce me. Don't you
yeah.
think that you should sign over? Then they were like, if you don't, we're going to sue you. And I'm like, okay. And so they thought that, I'm a startup, right? I don't have enough legal fees to fight big bad bodybuilding.com. And so they figured that, I would have to just give in and hand over the company to them. But I fought back. Um, and they dropped the lawsuit because they knew they didn't. There's no way they could prove that they owned the company when clearly I own the company, and they don't. They just wanted to own, the company, but it hurt. It hurt my personally brain. Me.
Yeah.
The CEO literally wrote a letter on their homepage claiming that I was a quack, that I didn't that I didn't formulate any of the supplements, right? That bodybuilding.com formulated them, which is ridiculous because the supplements just follow my old formulas that I was
Right.
giving people. So why would I need bodybuilding.com to formulate? But they literally wrote to however millions of people who went to bodybuilding.com on their homepage that I was a quack, um, and not a real scientist. I didn't formulate any of my products, et cetera. And so, that you know hurt the brand and the trust that people had in me.
Well, you know what? You've got this long tenured track record of doing all these things, whether it's as a consultant or putting out product reviews or anything of that nature. So, like, we all know who you are. We all know what you've done. Going forward, as far as, and by the way, bodybuilding.com is really not even a thing anymore.
Oh, they're
For
yeah,
those listeners that are wondering, it's not even a thing. I think Ty Lopez bought it, and we all know where that shit's going.
yeah,
So, you
right.
know, yeah. As far as I've got some questions here for you, kind of a Q and A to finish up this last
Yeah,
part of
of
the show.
course.
Um, a lot of this stuff supplement related, and I want to make sure, don't let me forget to talk to you about natural test boosters because that's a big thing where we are and something I take a lot of pride in. And your content's awesome around that. But first, let's start off. What are some of what's probably the number one thing that you think people need to know about supplements? I mean, everybody knows kind of how to look at labels a little bit in this day and age. It's different than it was 20 years ago, but what are some things that you think people are missing when it comes to understanding what a good supplement line is?
Yeah, I created a sort of uh, a supplement paradigm. I call it the five pillars of supplementation, which include, the ingredients, the form that they're in, timing, any synergies, right? Things like that. But those pillars are placed on a solid foundation of nutrition, right? And so, you've heard that saying, you can't out supplement a bad diet. So
Right.
before you even worry about taking supplements, okay? Maybe creatine, you can pop that in, I would recommend for numerous reasons. But before you even get there, make sure that your nutrition is sound,
Yeah.
so I think that's the most critical thing is instead of trying to add supplements to make up for a less than ideal diet, I think you should get your diet figured out and then add the supplements to help that diet even more so versus trying to fill the holes in your diet with supplements.
Yeah, we see that, we own Premier U Telemed. It's an online telemed clinic, and it's the same thing with peptides this day and age. Everyone peptides are the rage, and people are
Yes.
literally not even tracking their protein, carbs, and fats, and they're barely training right. You know what I'm saying? And they're like, but
Yes.
they want to start it. Like I see it kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah, everybody wants that that magic bullet.
Yeah, yeah. Where
Still,
do you?
still
Yeah, you know what? That'll probably never change.
never.
Where do you see as somebody that's, you've seen it all and you continue to see, I'd say ahead of everyone else, right? So I want to personally ask you, where do you think the supplement company industry, I guess in general, is headed in the next 10 years? Do you think there'll be more of a health focused based supplement approach? Like we own a company called New Ethics, right? And we make products that really help restore hormones by working with, chronically high cortisol and all these different things, right? So like that to me is still relatively new. Do you see it shifting more in that direction? Do you see more sports supplementation? What do you think's the next 10 years going to look like?
Yeah, I think definitely, as our population ages,
Mm,
those following us age along
yeah.
with us, that there's going to be more, I think, focus on health related, brain function, um, like with creatine, like for 5 years ago, if you mentioned creatine, a doctor would pop on and go, "Oh, that's bad for your kidneys. Oh, that's going to cause muscle cramps. Oh, you better be careful. Oh, you better drink enough water. Oh, all these negatives about creatine, right? Just 5 years ago. Now all of a sudden, oh, creatine, for cognitive function, yeah, we all knew that. That was one 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 of the pieces, but it took the brain, it wasn't the sport function, right? It wasn't the more strength, more endurance, bigger muscles that finally got people all, 99% of the population going, oh, yes, creatine is good. Everyone should take creatine, right? They shifted from, oh, be careful to, yes, everybody should take creatine. It was the brain, the benefits, it's the health, you know what I mean? And so, uh, I would say that that's definitely going to be more prominent in the future, more health,
Yeah.
promoting benefits, mushrooms, and their benefits, and then the AI thing. I think that's what's going to be possibly the next thing is AI formulated supplements.
Yeah. So speaking of creatine, have you been keeping up with a lot of the latest buzz and the research out there about taking, I say super high doses. I don't think it's super high, but 20 grams of creatine for like cognitive function.
Yeah, it was
Like if you're
about.
having a,
So there's a study. There's one study done with sleep deprivation where they gave them average about 25. It was, a relative dose based on their body weight, but average about 25 grams for most people. 25-gram dose. And with sleep deprivation, what they found was that 25-gram dose or so helped to negate some of the negative cognitive benefits of sleep deprivation, right? And
Yeah.
and then there's a recent study showing that even in healthy adults, creatine provides cognitive benefits. And then we used to say it was about a 5 gram dose, right? That's for the muscle building,
Yeah. Yep.
right? But truly, what the relative dose for athletic performance and muscle building is really zero point 0.1 grams per kilogram of body weight. So a 200-pound person, that's almost 9 grams of creatine,
Yeah.
So the 5 gram dose, is probably adequate, right? Because you build up a saturation, but you may get more benefits from even a higher dose, like going up to 10 grams a day, particularly those cognitive benefits, right? We know a lot about muscle. We know what it takes to saturate. We know less about the cognitive benefits. But now that all that research has spawned interest, there'll be more, and we'll have more, you know, better dosing strategies for the cognitive benefits
Yeah,
as
I
well.
know when Huberman started to put out a lot of content on this about six months ago, we saw our micronized creatine sales just go up, like just every single month go up, especially our 500-gram units. So I knew there was something out there. I personally have tried it because I travel and do all this stuff between the businesses. So I'm, low sleep is a thing. And I've tried it and I had any issues with bloating or anything like that. Have you tried the higher doses yourself, Jim? Have you found a spot to try it in?
I have, but I'm very sensitive to the stomach issues with monohydrate.
Hmm.
And I think what the research shows is a 5 gram dose, I think 20 to 30% of people get stomach issues. And then if
Yeah.
you go up to a 10 gram dose of monohydrate, I think it's something like 50 to 60% of people have stomach issues with a 10 gram dose. And the problem with the creatine monohydrate is if you've ever mixed it in just plain water, right? If you take a 5 gram scoop, dump that in water, and then
Yeah.
mix it, it never goes all the way into solution, right? You've always got those particles. Literally,
Yeah.
it'll take hours before it goes into solution. So when you drink that, those the particles that are sitting there in the bottom, the reason that you can see them is creatine draws water to it, right? It goes into the muscle,
Yeah.
right? And we know it draws water. That's one of the ways it acutely builds muscle, right? It pulls more water in.
Right.
Obviously, that's an acute thing, but then that more volume places, a stretch on the membrane, which is
Yeah.
believed to increase muscle protein synthesis, and then you get long term. But creatine is really an energy molecule, right? But
Yeah.
one of its properties is that it pulls water to it. So when it's in the muscle, it pulls water to the muscle. When you put it in a glass of water, going into solution means it's pulling water to it, right? Oh, in the solution, it's pulling the water in. It's going in the solution. Any particles that are sitting there in the bottom haven't pulled water in yet, right? So when you drink it now, and those particles are sitting in your intestines, what's going to happen?
Draws water.
It's
Yeah.
going to pull water into your intestines. If you pull water into your intestines, you know what that causes?
Some discomfort. Yeah.
Diarrhea, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds similar to like
Right.
when people take dextrose in, it's kind of the same way. You need a certain amount of water for it to start to empty. And a lot of people have gut issues. It sounds the same to me.
Yeah, well, it's a little different because that's with gastric emptying. This is literally those particles sitting in your intestines and drawing water to them, causing diarrhea, and then most of your creatine goes down the toilet on top of it. So that's why I personally use creatine hydrochloride. If you've seen some of my formulas, I use creatine hydrochloride because it changes the pH. And so when you put that in water, it instantly goes in the solution, and then it's not pulling anything into your stomach. So now, like I said, if you don't have any issues with monohydrate,
Yeah.
that's great. But for those who do, consider using a hydrochloride form, and
What
for that
dose do you
reason.
like
So when I do a high dose, I always use the hydrochloric form because I, I if I do a high dose of monohydrate, my stomach is wrecked.
Yeah. What dose do you like of the hydrochloric creatine?
So, with the hydrochloride, because it goes in the solution better, you tend to absorb it a little better. And so there
Yeah.
was one study that found that it's absorbed by about 60% better than monohydrate.
Yeah.
So if you just want to round down to say, you know, it's 50% better absorbed, you could get away with a lower dose of creatine. So if you were saying that a 5 gram dose for muscle of monohydrate is about the desired, sort of one size fits all dose, 5 grams, you could probably do even 2 to 3 grams
Yeah.
with hydrochloride, right? To be equivalent. But again, uh, uh, as long as you can afford it, it's a little bit more expensive, the hydrochloride form. I still do the full now that we know the brain benefits.
Yeah.
You may need a higher dose. I tend to go a bit higher with even hydrochloride, and I try to get about 7 to 8 grams in a day.
Yeah. Very cool. I know people just learned something there because it's not a super talked about ingredient. So that's pretty cool. Speaking of ingredients, I want to talk about natural test boosters with you. Because I take a lot of pride in the stuff that we've done I have a lot of people that compete, especially they're getting older, stepping on stage naturally drops test levels. So we're either trying to keep them up
Yes.
as
Yeah,
high as
dropping body
possible,
weight.
manage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your test levels.
Yeah.
Pretty
You've
basic.
been a big proponent for talking about what works and what doesn't work.
Yep.
If you would talk about some of your favorite ingredients that work to naturally help boost testosterone.
Yeah, it's interesting. Everybody says, "Oh, stop." Why are you talking about natural testosterone? But they're not going to raise it enough to actually be noticeable. If you asked, if you asked me 20 years ago, I would probably say the same thing. 20 years ago. However, I work with thousands and thousands of people, right? I've massive numbers of people to, try things on. And what I found over the years is that if you do combinations of ingredients, right, you can literally double I've seen people naturally triple their testosterone,
Me
right?
too. Yeah.
They've gone to 300 to 900
Yeah.
with fenugreek, with ashwagandha,
Yeah.
uricoma, right? Shilajit. These are those are four of my favorites, and then
Yeah.
I would throw DHEA in there as well.
Yeah. I I know you're a proponent for ashwagandha. That's one of the main drivers in one of our products, and I like it because it helps drive cortisol down, so your body can make more
Yes,
testosterone. And the studies are there to prove it. So I know I like CAM 66. There's a lot of just generic ashwagandha out there. Do you have a preference on what kind of ashwagandha that you like to recommend?
no, I just carry about the actives, the percentage of
Yeah.
the actives.
Yeah. And a lot of people they just don't know. They don't know the difference. So it's definitely one of those products. I think for aging, for everything else, I think
Yeah,
ashwagandha is literally one of the best things that people can take.
for sure.
Yeah.
Multiple, In fact, I have women who buy my Alpha Gym, which is a natural testosterone booster, because it's fenugreek, ashwagandha, shilajit. These these don't just work on testosterone. They have a multitude of health benefits,
Yeah.
and performance benefits.
Yeah. 100%. Um, what are you, a couple more here before we wrap up? What are you excited about, either as a supplement or an ingredient or anything else in the industry? What are you excited about that you're working on right now or you're looking into?
Wow, so much. I mean, I don't have any ingredients that I really want to talk about for this, but looking at things that enhance, um, muscle protein synthesis, the
Yeah.
ability to turn that on, because as we get older, right? We have what we call anabolic resistance.
Yeah.
And, so I'm 57 years old. So if I eat 40 grams of protein, my spike in muscle protein synthesis after that meal is compared to a 20-year-old is
Yeah.
going to be far less than the 20-year-olds. And so I'm interested in ingredients um, that may help to sort of magnify that response.
Yeah, that's something, as I get older, my clients have aged up with me, right? So I have a
Yeah,
lot of
exactly. Yeah, they age up
people in
with you.
their late 40s, 50s, 60s, competitors, what have you. And I've got to keep their protein higher because of that
Yeah,
decline in protein synthesis. And I love EAAs because not everyone can, some females can't stomach 180 grams of protein a day. So I like aminos. Is there anything that you like to do personally? You've built a hell of a physique. Like you're literally a walking billboard of what jacked it. Well, you're 57, right?
yes.
Jacked at 57 looks like. What are some of the things that you do to help? Or do you just keep your protein intake really high? Do you use
Yeah, so
aminos?
similarly, like you were saying with the essential amino acids, what I'll do with my meals is, I will add digestive enzymes because that's the other thing as you age, your ability to produce those enzymes falls a bit. And so adding some digestive enzymes, and not just proteases, but also ones that are going to help with carbohydrates and lipids as well. But what I'll do is I'll add branch chains. And the reason I add the branch chains versus the essential is if I'm already eating a meal, like let's say it's a steak and it's giving me 50 grams of protein, right? It, I've got plenty of essential amino acids there, right?
Yeah.
But which one is the key to stimulating muscle protein synthesis? It's leucine, right?
Right.
Well, there was a study that found that when they provided a meal that provided 2 grams of leucine or free-form amino acids that provided 2 grams of leucine, and then they measured the appearance of the leucine in the blood, not only did the free-form amino acids appear quicker, the leucine in the blood, than the whole food meal, right? As you would expect,
Yeah.
right? Because it's already pre-digested. But the amount of leucine that appeared in the blood from the free form was double the amount of leucine from the whole food meal. So,
Okay. Oh, yeah.
so even if you calculate how much leucine is in a meal, based on this study, and it's only one study, but it's the only one we have, you're not getting all that leucine.
Yeah.
And so instead of taking essential amino acids, right, which are going to, obviously provide you leucine, but at a lower ratio, right, because it's providing you all the other ones. All I'm interested really is the leucine, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm getting the other essential amino, right? That's what I really want to make sure I'm getting. And what the research shows is you need at least 3 grams of leucine, right, to maximize muscle protein, and probably even more, 4 or 5 for an older
Yeah.
individual. So I want to get that leucine up, right? And so the best way to do that is to use branch chains. And you would say, well, why not just leucine? Well, leucine appears, even though it's the MVP of the 3 branch chains, it appears to work best when the other two are in its presence
Yeah.
at about a 2-to-1 ratio. So double the leucine to the isoleucine and the valine, which are the other 2 branch chain amino acids. So I'll add that to a meal because I want to maximize my leucine, right, as an older individual to really help crank that up. And I'm preferring the branch chains over the essentials because I'm getting more leucine, right?
Yeah. It's a super interesting
But the
topic.
same concept that you're applying. You're trying to get those extra aminos to
Yeah.
bump that up.
Couple other fun ones here as we wrap up because well, one, let's just go with this one. What keeps you up at night? What's something that just keeps you up and you're just like, I can't wait for this? Or what is it at this point? Because you've
I'm
experienced
glad you
so much.
said I'm glad you said I can't wait for this because a lot of people ask me, what keeps you up at night? Like, what is your biggest worry? And I'm like,
Oh no, I mean excitement. Yeah.
yeah, that's why I said when you were saying that, I was going to say, there's not really much, I'm not a worry. I'm not
Yeah.
one of those people who worry, much. I'm not one of those people who are like, what if
Yeah.
this, I'm just like, running a business it's been over 12 years now. You just learn to roll. You know what I mean? You adapt, you roll, you juke, you.
Yep. Problem
So there's
solved.
nothing I ever, I've been sued so many times that nothing can even
You've
make
built up the
it
calluses
any
and the
longer.
scar
But as
tissue.
far as excitement, like I said, finding something that's going to help with that muscle protein synthesis. And then the other thing is what I'm really excited about now is all this talk about stretch and range of motion. You know what I mean? Where is the most critical part, the range of motion on an exercise? Is it the very, initial part? Is it the stretch? Because, we've got research that showed that half reps, and I mean from the starting point to the halfway point, can
Yeah.
build, if not more muscle, at least as much muscle as a full, right?
Yeah.
Rep exercise. Then we have studies showing that just stretching under load, not even moving, just holding the weight,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not talking about for a few seconds. I'm talking about for several minutes. It's no easier than actually doing the movement, but
Yeah.
it shows that just stretching the muscle can increase muscle growth without even any movement. And then there's a study on isometrics where they had them do leg extensions with one leg that was doing full range of motion, leg extensions. The other leg was just training isometrically. It didn't even move. That leg grew twice as much as the moving leg. Okay. Now it
Holy
was very
shit.
small. It wasn't statistically significant because the one doing the full range increased muscle size by 1% this is in trained individuals for 6 weeks. The isometrics increased the quadricep size by 2%, but it's such a low magnitude,
Yeah.
1% versus 2%, even though it's double, it's still only 2%. But even if you're saying they grew equivalently, not moving the leg at all, just pushing against an inanimate object in the stretch position was enough to instigate muscle growth in trained individuals.
So in
So,
the stretch positions, that's interesting because think about the magnitude this would have for someone who's injured, right? Like,
yes,
but it's
exactly.
do you feel like
Exactly. You don't
do
even
you
have
feel
to
like that
move.
stretch position is the key
I
that you're
don't, we
coaching?
don't, it's so hard to say, but, uh, what's interesting is back in the 80s, late 80s, very early 90s, when I was a competitive bodybuilder, we all stretched.
Yeah.
We, we, we focused on the stretch. We stretched in between sets to, we thought it would help to build muscle. And
Yeah.
then I went to college in exercise science, right? And kind of forgot all about that because as an exercise scientist, do you do the bench press like this or do you do the bench press like this?
Full
We
range. Yeah.
teach we teach exercise, right? That's what we focus on the exercise. So this is not a correct bench press. So you'll often see exercise scientists correcting professional bodybuilders going, that's not the proper way to do the bench press. You're not going up all the way. And it's like, no, he's not going up all the way for a reason.
Yeah.
There's a reason he's not going up all the way. And if you'll notice, he has a bigger chest than any other human on the planet. So I think he knows a thing or two about building muscle. And then they'll say, well, he's using steroids, so anything he does in the gym is gonna respond. And I'm like, really? Anything he does in the gym, he's gonna respond? Yes. The steroids will make the response better, but he's competing against other bodybuilders who are also using steroids.
Exactly.
If you compare those who are doing the half reps to those who are doing the full reps, the half reps seem to have bigger muscle than even though they're both using. But anyway, so it's really an interesting concept. And as I say to everybody, we don't know anything about muscle growth yet. We know some processes that happen, but the more we learn, how much little we know. you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the more you learn how little you actually know. And so every time we open a door and find another process in muscle growth, it just opens 10 more doors of questions. Well, then why does this happen? Why are there microRNAs that come along and break down all the protein synthesis that just happened a microsecond ago? We don't know, you know? And so, like I said, I'm excited about this area now that we're starting to think about repetitions, not just being start to finish, but hey, what about start to halfway? What about halfway to finish? What about just the start and not, you know, like we're now breaking down the actual rep scientifically. And so probably, you know, in the next 20 years or so, we'll start getting more concrete answers about, you know, where in the rep range is most important, or how
Yeah.
heavy to go, or how much rest or volume, you know?
Yeah, that's super interesting with me. It's something I think about at night is, if you're going to compare a floor press with a barbell versus a
Yep.
bench press where you go all the way down into that stretch position, are you going to ultimately get more growth because you're still getting a little bit more stretch, a little bit more on that eccentric side? Like I would love to see that studied specifically. So yeah, that's super fascinating.
Yeah, there'll definitely be studies like that. They just
Yeah.
take time because, you know, we're sort of just learning. Like I said, uh, it's the fault of exercise scientists. You know, we all like look at those guys doing those reps and going, Jay Cutler doesn't know how to bench press. I'm like, Jay
Yeah.
Cutler has the biggest pecs. You know what I mean? Like, there's no exercise scientist that can compare pecs to Jay Cutler. So you're telling me he's wrong? And again, it gets back to the fact that we teach the exercise as exercise scientists, right? And we typically work with athletes. And an athlete, you want them to do the full range of, you want them to be strong through the full entire range of motion so that when they're on the field, no matter what position they're in, they have the strength, they have the protection from injury. But what does a bodybuilder want to do? He simply wants to build his muscles as big as they possibly can get. And
Yeah.
so for decades, you know, all exercise scientists we're looking at bodybuilders and going, they're stupid. They don't know what they're doing. Why are they, versus going, wait, what's happening here? How
Yeah.
is
Let's
that
study
guy?
it.
How is that guy doing half of a bench press and getting pecs like that? There's got to be something going on. And that's where we're finally at now.
Yeah.
You know, we're finally starting to answer those questions. You know, and people like Brad Schoenfeld
Yeah.
are starting to do that research. You know, we didn't have that research before because you nobody cares scientifically how to get bigger biceps, right? We care about how to prevent atrophy. And so a lot of the things we know about muscle hypertrophy is through research on, you know, like Duchenne's, right? And things that cause muscle breakdown and sarcopenia, right? That we sort of have flipped what we've learned there on the other side to muscle growth. Whereas
Yeah.
nobody was really going, how do you get bigger biceps? Oh, let me get funding for that. Nobody's going to fund a study on how to get bigger biceps. What does that do for anyone? Right? Well, where's the health implications? Where's the medical, you know? Well, that's what research is. But now I could say maybe one of the positives out of all these influencers now, right? All these fitness influencers is that we're talking about this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we're really starting to talk about it and go, hey, why is he doing a half rep and his
Yeah.
chest is and you know what? The guy who won the Olympia before him also bench pressed that way. And the guy who won the Olympia before him also bench pressed that way. Well, what's going on? You know? And so now we're starting to think about hypertrophy because we have so many influencers that there's a discussion going on. Whereas before, it was literally, you know, a handful of us, you know,
Yeah.
talking about this outside of the labs. You know what I mean? And so now I think we'll finally start getting more answers about muscle hypertrophy.
Yeah, shout out to, Brad Schoenfeld, good friend of ours, Dr. Bill Campbell, those guys like that really
Yes,
kind of leading the
exactly.
way. Jose Antonio did some of the early
Yep.
stretching studies, which are super important. So good guys there putting in the work. Here's a fun one. Somewhere listening, there's a young Jim listening to the show right now. If you could go
Yes.
back to yourself and say 2000, what would you tell young Jim or someone like you listening to the show right now? What would, if you could say anything, what would it be?
I guess, one of the things that I like to, if we're talking about people in this industry, right? If that person is in the industry and wants to do the, fitness kind of influencing thing, the thing that I tell people is what is going to set you apart? What is the thing that sets you apart from the next trainer or the next PhD, right? Or the next whatever, right? Physical therapist who's coming online to give information. What sets you apart? What is it? You know, what is it? For me, it was I had my undergrad. I had a minor in English, so I love to write, right? And that's why I got into the the magazines and writing books, which then led to this,
Right.
the video stuff. But it was taking, two things that I'm good at, the science and the ability to write. And, that was my thing. But what is your thing? Right? What is the thing that you bring? You've already got the fitness. Maybe you have a certification. Maybe you have a master's degree or a bachelor's or even a PhD. But in today's world, that no longer sets you apart. There's a ton of PhDs. I used to be one of the few, that, guys doing videos on YouTube with an actual, advanced degree. Now, everybody with a PhD is on social media, right?
Right.
Because it's their responsibility. Like I saw mine, but back in the day, social media was, a fad to them. Now it's a thing, and now it's everybody's responsibility. So every PhD has a TikTok or an Instagram or some
Yeah.
way to share what they're doing, in the lab at some degree. Okay. So the PhD no longer sets you apart. What is it going to be? And I
Yeah.
can't answer that. Maybe it's music. You love music, for whatever. Find a way to, bring both of those worlds in that sets you apart. You know what I mean? And I don't mean anything like, campy or, but, figure out what it is that is going to want to make people listen to you versus the next person who has the same credentials that you have.
Yeah, I love it. Jim, from all of us, thank you for everything that you've done in the industry. It's been good. Like the industry is in a good place, and it's guys like you that have paved the way that let us do the things that we do. So we appreciate you, and thanks for coming on the show, man. What's next for you? Anything fun, exciting coming up?
Well, I mean, this is always exciting. So, continue getting information, out there and trying to get the answer to what grows muscle.
Yeah, it's always the thing, right?
you know, it's that's what keeps me up. That's what keeps me excited is, like what is it? Is it this part doing the rep? Is it doing it this way? Is it doing this? Or if you tweak that, that's what
Yeah.
I love.
Yeah, I love it. Well, for all of our listeners, you can hit pause, go to the show notes, anywhere you want to find any content from Jim. If you want to follow him, you want to check out his website, a supplement line, everything we've got it here in the show notes. Jim, thanks again for coming on. For myself, Lisa, and Dr. Jym Stoppani, we're out of here. See you guys.